everybody, welcome back. David Yon on the Stunning Miss Lady Pop Hunter here with another of our fading nostalgia discussions. Although this is kind of an opposite of fading nostalgia, because this is reflecting on things that have changed where you kind of approve of the change. And in this particular instance, it's things that used to be ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
Like they were true luxury items back in the day, 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. And today, you can get it even though the value of the dollar has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Get it for a lot less than it would have cost a few decades ago.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of things that have gone up, mostly consumable goods, like the cost of food has gone up, the cost of gas has gone up, the cost of a vehicle, housing, things like that, utilities continue to increase, medication, but there's other things that once upon a time, they cost so much it didn't make any sense. Or now that you look back on it, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And you can get it today for so much cheaper than you could just a few decades ago. And the first thing that comes to mind is computer systems.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember when the original computer systems were first being made available to the consumer, when like CompuServe and places like that existed, where you would have to, or you have to mail order a system from Dell.
Yeah.
And for your big cathode ray, like 70-pound monitor with a screen like this big,
A 9-inch screen.
and your like 246 kilobyte memory hard drive system that by today's standards would not even hold a photograph.
No.
It wouldn't even hold enough pixels for a photograph. With the big 5-inch, you'd have to use two 5-inch floppy disks. One was the drive and one was for your program. Or you'd have to have a cassette tape. Some of them took like the Commodore 64 took a cassette. But to get a whole functional system, especially if you needed like a printer and a scanner, something like that.
And you had to have a scanner if you wanted to send or upload photos.
Yeah.
You had to have a scanner.
You had to have a scanner. So, yeah, and now it's all in one. You buy a printer, it's got a scanner, everything's in there, but it used to be all separate components. A fax machine, a scanner, and a printer with three different units. So if you bought a whole system, if you got like your monitor, your actual your tower or flat, most of them used to be flat, like a desktop, flat. Your keyboard,
mouse.
When mice came out, because remember, we didn't always have mice.
Yeah, you had that little the keys.
That's what the F keys are actually for. Those F keys aren't something you press by accident. They actually they still have a function, but most people don't know what they do.
Or the control plus the letter.
Yeah.
You know, like control P to the print, and control this, control that.
Because I was originally trained on F keys, but I don't remember all of them now. But once upon a time, we didn't have mice, and that's how you had to do it. But and a printer and a scanner, and you could be into that computer for like $3,000.
Yeah.
You know, easily. Now, even a high-end like gamer system, you probably wouldn't pay that much.
Yeah.
You know, for a good gaming tower, you might pay $500 to $700. But that's something that has continued to drop in price.
And then it was a time in the 90s where a new computer system came out every month, because
it seemed like it, yeah.
Yeah, because they were getting better, they were improving on it. So you bought a computer in December for Christmas. By January, that computer was obsolete. Now you can get 168 megabytes of RAM. There was always RAM.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a commercial. If I could find it, I'll look for it. But there's a commercial with a guy, and I'm just paraphrasing here. He's driving in his convertible, and he's got like all the big boxes all in the seat because huge cases, especially the monitor case.
Yeah.
And it's like the Turbo Mark II or something like that. And he's like all proud of himself, and he's driving, and he stops his car at the red light, and he looks up, and there's a billboard, and it says "Coming soon, Turbo Mark III," and he's like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, and now the monitors are super cheap, keyboards are nothing.
Oh, they give them away.
Yeah, the mouse, all of that stuff is really cheap, and you have so much memory and storage on it. You got terabytes of storage now, where before, like he said, you only had like little megabytes of RAM and storage and all of that, and then you had this big box of floppy disks that you had to label whatever was on it.
I think the original Windows, one of the original Windows operating systems, when it was on the 3 3/4 inch disc, you needed like 28 of them to load it into your computer.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just saving documents or files.
Yeah.
They came, of course they had this big bin that
you'd have to save it in sections.
Yeah.
Basically,
this
is what she
1
means.
through 50 of a Word document you were trying to write.
And that's another thing too. Software has gotten a lot cheaper.
Software is cheaper. They don't even sell they don't really even sell it on disc anymore.
Hardly.
You used to get a CD-ROM and you upload it, but now you just download it. Go to the website, download it off of the internet. Or go to eBay or something, and they send you a download code, and you just download it. So now you don't have to even save those discs anymore. Because I remember I had a CD binder full of programs. You had Word, you had Windows, you had this, you had that for your computer. But now the computer either comes with it, or you can download it off of the internet.
Yeah, and cell phones tie in with that too, because it's like, speaking of electronics, and a lot of cell phones are still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
But back in our day, there was no free or at a discount with a new phone service or something like that, and you could pay for like the original cell phones, which in the 80s, which came in a briefcase because it needed a battery that size, and you got like an hour or two worth of charge out of it, and something like that could run like almost $2,000. So they were all, by comparison, a lot more expensive, even though some of them can still be expensive now. They do more. Yeah,
and then you didn't see the number. So somebody calling you,
you don't know who it is.
You don't know who's calling until you answer. You sure wasn't sending no texts and pictures and doing all of that. And you had to buy cell phone time, and you had peak hours, and that was the same with telephone service. It kind of ties in. You had peak hours, you had to buy long distance service, and you had so many commercials from various companies selling you long distance service.
Yeah, the long distance means calling out of your area code. It doesn't mean I'm calling China. It means dialing outside your area code.
Yeah, you could be in the same state and had a different area code. That was long distance, and you had to pay for that.
Yeah. And if you remember, because I remember the commercial, I think it was AT&T, your first 5 for $1.05. So your first 5 minutes is an extra $1.05 charge, and the next 5 minutes for 89 cents. And it was a song. And your next 5 minutes for now just 89 cents. And it's, if you could imagine that, if you were on a cell phone, it could be as much as $8 a minute, depending upon the distance of the call. And now, of course, the cell phone calls are free.
Yeah, you don't pay long distance. You don't have long distance carriers
anymore.
Done
away with.
All of that is over with. But you also had to pay for, like, call waiting. You had to pay for call waiting. You had to pay for
caller ID when it came out in the early 90s.
Yeah, and also the answering service.
Yeah, if you remember. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you had either an answering machine with the tapes, or you can get the answering machine service within the phone like it is now, and that was a charge.
Yeah.
And now everything I just want phone automatic service. Everything comes with it.
Yeah, because for those of you who aren't old enough to remember, like when someone calls and the number pops up, back in those days when it became available in the early 90s, you had to buy a box.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little digital box, and you plugged it. It came with two extensions, so you plugged it from the phone jack
mm-hmm.
into that, and then put another plug into the phone. And when a call came in, the number would display on the box.
Yeah.
If you had the service.
Yeah.
That's how that would work.
And you had to pay for that service. That service was not free.
Yeah, and I don't think people appreciate just how much their cell phone does now.
Yeah.
I've heard the analogy, and it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to make you think that in all of NASA, all the computers in NASA in 1969 could not do what your cell phone does now. And they put a man on the moon, and you play Angry Birds.
Yeah.
So think about it.
Watch TikTok videos.
Food for thought. That
yeah.
You have all that potential in your hands, and people squander it for the most part.
Basically,
mm-hmm.
But yeah, phone service, TV.
Oh God, yeah. TVs used to be so unbelievably expensive. Get an old, and I've shown these. Like I did a Sears catalog tour.
Mm-hmm.
Do our catalog tours sometimes on this channel, and the cost of those
mm-hmm.
old, bulky, heavy-ass televisions. This 250-pound floor model TV with a screen that's only about that wide.
19-inch.
Yeah, and you're paying like $700, $800, $1,000 for a screen like that, and it weighs a ton.
But you know what I find amazing, and I still do? When we was a kid, the screen, 19, maybe 20 inches average.
Yeah.
That's what you had in your house. And you had one. And you could see that TV so clear from way back there. But now get a 19-inch TV. I can't see nothing on that TV. Because I have a little tiny TV in my sewing room. I think it's like a 20-inch. And man, I cannot see TV, and every time I watch it while I'm sewing,
even though it was analog, for somehow or other the resolution worked differently.
I don't know if it's just the resolution or you got used to the bigger screen.
It could have been the curve, the way the curve project, because it was a rounded screen.
Yeah, but it just seems like you were able to see that TV from. Seemed like 50 feet away. I could see that TV so clear. I could see everybody, everything. But now you have the same size TV on a flat screen and you can't see nothing.
I think we're just conditioned to want, because now that there's such huge sizes available and such a cheap price. We were at the Walmart the other day, and it was Target. I'm sorry.
Yesterday.
Yeah, we were buying vinyl records at Target. But it was 70 or 72 inches.
Yeah.
It's not even. It's like
$550.
Yeah, and I'm like, God, $550 in my day would have gotten you like a 15-inch black and white set, because you had to choose between black and white or color.
Yeah.
It's because they were so expensive, and they had engineers. If you had a broken TV, you could bring it into a repair shop and they could fix it.
Yeah.
You can't fix a flat screen.
No.
That thing is trash.
Once that breaks, it's done.
It's done.
You got to go get yourself a new one, and you're not going to get another 70-inch. Now you got to go to 75, 80 inch.
Yeah, you may as well get the bigger one if you're going to go through that.
Yeah, and
but they were so expensive.
They were so expensive, but I still get amazed. Like I said, and I know it sounds funny, but think about it. When you were a kid, how big your TV was. I mean, the screen size.
Yeah, because it required more space because it was the type of electronics that was inside.
Yeah, it wasn't
solid state.
You didn't have a 50-inch, 70-inch TV, but you could see that TV. And to me, that's just amazing. How in the world could I have seen that TV when Now I can't see it.
Oh, and they did have TVs with a big screen, but it was a projection screen.
Oh, that
and
came out in the 90s, and you couldn't see that either.
No, they had them in the 70s.
Oh, they had them in the 70s?
They had them in the 70s, but it was like it was projected to the screen instead of from behind. Mm-hmm. Like in the ones that they had in the 90s, it was projected from inside the set against the screen from the back. But in the 70s, they had it, and it was like a modern projection system. So it had a stem, and it would go to the screen, but those things were like $3,000 to $5,000.
But those projection TVs were awful.
They didn't work well.
They were
bad
not
resolution.
clear. The color was always awful, and if you stood to the side, you couldn't see it at all.
Well,
if you
and
were
you had
on the side,
knobs for color adjustment, and because you had to turn the you'd had to dial it in yourself to get the color resolution right. And they had one for each of the three main colors, and you'd have to. And then they had the black and white scale and the hold. They had a vertical hold, and you'd have to finagle all of those to dial the color in right.
It was just a lot of work when you got a TV just getting it set up. Now you plug it in basically, and it actually, you want me to scan. No, I don't need you to scan. I'm not going to watch regular TV. I'm just going to plug up my DVD and my cable, and we're done.
Yeah.
But back then, it was like programming the TV. It was a big deal, and you were so happy when you got a new TV. Like, wow, we got a new TV, and it's color. It's cable ready. And that was another thing. You saw commercials on TV. Cable ready TV.
Oh, yeah, when cable first started really rolling out.
Because that meant it had a cable jack on the back so you could screw in your cable line.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Internet service. Internet service is still expensive. I don't know why we got that done.
Yeah, but, I mean, I think what you're talking about is because you used to have to pay. Nowadays we have to pay the provider, and it's still expensive. But back then you had to pay for the host. So like AOL was like between $30 to $60 a month, depending upon how good your connection could be. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. When it was still a dial-up modem. Yeah,
because you just used to plug it into the phone line. Because you had dial-up service, you plugged it into the phone line.
Yeah, and it would call the router, and hopefully there was a spot because it didn't always connect.
And it'd kick you off.
Yeah, it would kick you off. Sorry, it's too busy. It was peak hours, and when you paid more for the hosting service, they would change your queue. So if I had the $60 service as opposed to the $30. I would queue first. You know, it's kind of like buying the behind the scenes pass at Disney. You know, it's like, and you get to cut the line, but then there's still another line.
Yeah.
But so you'd have to pay those hosting services, no matter who you used. AOL was just one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And that was done away with, but cable service got to be more expensive when people started using cable for the dial-up instead of telephone service for the dial-up. And I remember when, if you and this is where a lot of people got okey-doked, if you didn't realize the location of that router when it called, it was making a long distance call. So if you didn't have a long distance service at all, because some people would just say, you know, I don't make calls out of my area code, so I don't want to bother. And then they didn't have a good long distance service. And then they would get on the computer, and they'd be on the computer for a few hours every day. And then their phone bill would be like $2,000. It's like, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah.
But so that did away with all of that, because you're paying your host, and then you were paying the phone service. But then cable, people started using cable more because it was more reliable for a connection. And then, you know, cable got wise to that and started raising their prices up. And then eventually the hosting services became free. Because I don't think anybody pays for hosted services anymore.
And AOL is all gone, I think. I don't know.
AOL still exists.
Oh, okay.
But they, you know, people don't, because Huffington Post is owned by AOL.
Oh, okay.
But they don't, it's not like it was, because you don't think about them anymore because they used to advertise all the time.
Yeah.
And they used to send you discs.
Yeah, you got those discs in the mail for AOL, in it to upload onto your computer
Yeah.
for the service. But that's all done away with. And then we got electronics, because electronics, and that ties into like the TV. Electronics used to be expensive. Calculators, VCRs, CD players, DVD players, MP3 players.
VHS.
Yeah.
Those things were expensive.
Those things were very expensive.
Yeah.
And that's just the hardware we're talking about.
Yeah.
That was expensive. Calculators used to be hundreds of dollars.
Or
now
more.
they're free.
In the 70s, especially, and I found some from a collection that somebody had at a yard sale once a few years back, and sold them. Because I bought them, but then I was like, I don't want these. But yeah, it's like, it caught my attention because he didn't want nothing. He was like, yeah, I want $5 or whatever. And this thing was in like a suitcase, and it was a calculator. I forget what it was called, and it had these big plugs, and it did basic math. It wasn't like any kind of it wasn't scientific. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's it. And this thing, it was like a typewriter inside of a briefcase, and I did some research on it, and originally this was almost a $3,000 calculator when it was being sold in like 1971, 1972, because that's what a calculator looked like then, and the only people who used them were like architects and scientists and stuff like that. So calculators were stupid expensive in the 70s and even the 80s.
Yeah, because I remember when Texas Instrument was big, and they came out with that scientific calculator that could do calculus and all kind of weird things like
They're
that.
expensive.
But then it was kind of hard to figure out how to use it. It had like so many extra buttons.
Yeah.
It's like, what does all of this even mean?
And then, when we were in school, you weren't allowed to use a calculator anyway. You get you could get detention or even suspended for using a calculator.
Because it was considered cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you got found out, you could the best thing you could do is either get a failing grade, or the worst thing is, like he said, get suspended or detention.
Yeah. Because
that was frowned upon. Then when I
just think that's interesting, because nowadays, again, remember, I worked with youth before. They can't do the math without it.
Yeah.
The calculator's doing the math problems. If you ask them to write it out or explain it, they don't know they can't help you.
Yeah. And now every phone has a calculator built in. You go to conventions, they give away calculators in their little grab bags. So VCRs used to be hundreds of dollars, $400 for a VCR. They don't sell them anymore, but the last time I remember seeing one, probably like in Walmart or something like that, it was $50.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but they were $300-$400, and then you talking about programming and all of that. You can get up to $600 for a VCR. And the same with DVD players when they first came out, couple of $100.
CD and DVD players were hundreds. Yeah. Laser disc players.
Yeah. Now you can go to Walmart, buy yourself a DVD player, $30.
Yeah.
Amazon, sometime $20.
They get them dirt cheap now. And the media it used to be a lot more expensive as well.
Yeah.
Because we're coming from the era when VHS cassettes were like $100 or more. The average price was between $80 to $120 for a VHS cassette tape for your VCR. Yeah. And then when DVDs first started rolling out, they were up there too. They weren't as over $100, I don't think, but usually about the $60 to $80 range, I believe.
Yeah. Now you can get a new one $5 or less sometimes.
Yeah, they don't cost. I think a first release is usually around the $20 mark, and then they back it off.
But I'm saying, like, you can go to Dollar General, Family Dollar. They got that bin, $2-3. You go to Goodwill.
The used ones.
Yeah, you go to Goodwill. They selling them. Yeah, the Goodwill is always expensive, but you can get DVDs, VCR tapes, even CDs now for under $1 in places where before, like he said, they were in the hundreds of dollars, $50 or more. And you're like, man, only the rich and the elite can buy these things. But it seems like now they've made it where anybody can own and have these things, you know. And they're all material things, but it's still cool to have. Then you got switching up a little bit. You got lobster and shrimp.
Yeah, luxury foods.
Yeah, luxury foods
were very expensive.
Lobster and shrimp used to be like, again, only the elite could eat that because it was so expensive to eat. Now they sell it in the grocery store.
Yeah, they're cheap now. It's the lobster, shrimp, and crawdads and all of that kind of stuff. Clams used to be a big deal, and it's funny because before the turn of the last century, they weren't. You know, that was like a pauper's food almost, and then something changed. I'm not sure quite what, but something changed whereby they became a luxury item. With better preparation and things like that, and also because certain parts of the country you couldn't get it readily. Now you can. It's like you wouldn't have gotten lobster in Kansas. It's impossible. But you can now, and it won't be that much either.
And they sell shrimp in the wing place, so you know you can get a little shrimp dinner. And then, of course, you go to the Chinese restaurant, you can get some shrimp fried rice or some lobster fried rice, some lobster sauce or something like that. It don't cost nothing.
Yeah, but once upon a time, that was a luxury meal. You went out to Red Lobster, you were paying. The Red Lobster's still expensive, but back then it was a different kind of expensive.
Yeah, and then the one thing I will say at Red Lobster, if you buy the main lobster, that's the lobster that's at the front, the live one.
Yeah.
They do a great job cooking that. That is good because they take it out of the water, they prep it and do all of that. And it's expensive. Well, it's more expensive than everything else on a menu.
That's because the other stuff's prefab.
Yeah, but it's still not as expensive as it used to be. And then you got champagne.
Yeah, wine and champagne.
Has gone down.
You didn't used to go into the supermarket and pick up a bottle for $5 or whatever.
Especially champagne. And we saw a commercial for the first time ever, a champagne commercial. I can't remember the name of the champagne, but that's what sparked our interest with this, because I'm like, wow, that's champagne. I thought champagne was expensive, and you know, we were like, I guess not. And we thought about it and we looked around, and now you can buy champagne in the grocery store.
It ain't high end.
No, but still, you know, champagne.
It's available.
Yeah, it's there. If you want some, and you say I can't afford the high end stuff that they always talking about in the movies, you can taste some. From Kroger
if you wanted to. Yeah. And then the other one that popped into my head there was flowers and roses. That used to be a big deal. To get a dozen roses for somebody. You can go to, again, like you said, Kroger. You can go to Kroger or Walmart and pick up a dozen roses for pretty cheap now, but back in, like, say the 70s, 80s, whatever, you got a dozen roses. Could you afford a dozen roses?
Now you can get it on the side of the road on Valentine and Mother's Day. A dozen
roses, you could pay $10, $12 a rose back in the day. And the cultivating of plants was a lot more difficult back then. Wasn't done as much or as often or as readily available as it is now for like flower shops and places like that. Although you still pay a little bit at a flower shop, but arrangements are still cheaper than they used to be. Or orchids, for example. Orchids used to go for thousands. They were very difficult to maintain, and there was very few people, orchid experts, who used to cultivate them. And like I said, certain types of orchids could go for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. But now you can buy them at the supermarket. You know, they've got orchids are dirt cheap now.
And it's like, you look around and you wonder what caused this shift in prices in certain areas. And then in other areas, it went up astronomically, like with cars, because you have more technology. I wouldn't even say that it's built better, because sometimes you see cars built in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they still moving, and then you got cars built in 2000s. But I know it depends on how you keep the car and how you treat it and all of that. But
Well, the more electronics are in the car, the harder it is to maintain too.
yeah, but it seems like with all of the technology, the improvement in materials, it would have got cheaper, but it didn't. And the same with houses. They got these newer houses that's built with particle board. It doesn't seem like it lasts as long. And we got, again, better technology, supposedly better material, but
if you can afford it.
yeah, but the quality of it isn't good. And then the cost is just like through the roof. And you're like, why is this house costing so much to build? Fresh off the market, y'all. But anyway.
Other types of media too, like books used to be. Books used to be more. I know there's expensive books out there, but that used to be more, especially volume sets, or like if you look at the encyclopedias.
They don't even make the encyclopedia.
Encyclopedia World Book Encyclopedia still makes a solid set.
Oh, they still make a physical book?
They're the only ones that have it available.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how many people buy them, but they're the only ones that still have it available, if I remember correctly. But a good set of encyclopedias, you definitely going to pay more than $1,000 for new back in the day, but the internet killed that.
Yeah, and then so much information is coming out so quickly.
Yeah.
And then you got all of these events just happening. Like before, the encyclopedia came out every 5 years or something?
It was every year. They
year?
would update it.
Oh, okay.
You didn't need to replace it every year.
Yeah.
But it was available every year with revisions.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it was an expensive, and you made payments on that like a car.
Yeah.
But it was something that, if you did independent learning, if you were homeschooling, if you had a kid that was going to college or something like that, probably a good idea to have a set.
Yeah, they gave it to you going to college, or a set, an encyclopedia, and you were happy for your research.
And then that was reduced to, I think Encyclopedia Britannica was the first one. They killed it. They stopped printing them and was putting it on disc.
Yeah.
So you bought the disc sets, and then they did away with even that. Britannica's still around.
Yeah, they just got an internet website.
It's an online service now.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the things that we thought of. I'm sure it's more things. Let us know in the comments. But those are the things that we could think of. What did you think about it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's something. I like she said. There's plenty more you could discuss, but something that was real expensive back in the day, that nowadays it's gotten really cheap.
Yeah.
So let us know what your thoughts are in the comments section down below. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you got something out of it. We hope you did. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Check out some of the other videos. And if that's it, then what more can we say but thanks for watching. And we will see you again soon.